So welcome everybody to the BC Land Summit Society Presents. We'll just give everybody a few minutes more to log on. We're expecting just under 200 people today. My name is Tara Culham. I'm a director of the BC Land Summit Society, and I'm also the executive director of the BC Society of Landscape Architects. So it's just 12:01 now. We'll give everybody a few more minutes and then we'll get started because this presentation is amazing. I've seen some fantastic slides. And we're grateful to the Real Estate Institute of British Columbia for providing their tech support and their platform for us to offer this great seminar today. Okay, well, it's 12:03 p.m. and I'm going to help us get started here. And there I will still be people signing on, but in the interest of time, we'll just get started. So again, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending the BC Land Summit Society Presents inaugural webinar. We will be hosting quarterly webinars. Each one of the member societies will lead a session that leads up to the BC Land Summit in 2024, which will be held May 8th to 10th in Nanaimo, British Columbia. My name is Tara Cullum. I am, again, the director of the BC Land Summit Society and the executive director of the BC Society of Landscape Architects. While we meet today on a virtual platform in various parts of the province, I acknowledge the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish nations of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam land that we are on today. And I encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the unceded territory you reside on as well. We do this to recognize and express gratitude to the First Nations, Inuit, or Métis people for the land that we are on. Please use the question and answer feature located on the bottom center of your screen to ask questions. Darren and Ian will respond to those questions at the end of their presentation as time allows. I also want to let you know that this meeting is being recorded and the question and answer portion will also be recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, just turn off your camera. And we will make the presentation available following this event in a day or two. The Land Summit Society members organizations all practice in fields related to land and land use. And the members are the Appraisal Institute of Canada, BC, the British Columbia Institute of Agrologists, the BC Society of Landscape Architects, the Planning Institute of BC, and the Real Estate Institute of BC. Held every 5 years, the BC Land Summit is the premier collaborative conference providing interdisciplinary education, professional development, training, and networking opportunities for professional practitioners in the fields related to land and land use. And the next Land Summit, Collaborations and Connections, will be held May 8th to 10th in Nanaimo, BC, and we're really excited about going there. It is my pleasure to welcome Darren Kwiatkowski. He's the Executive Vice President of New Development with Shape Properties. And Mr. Ian Wasson, he is a BCSLA member and a fellow of the CSLA. He is currently the Senior Development and Urban Design Planner for the City of Burnaby. Darren and Ian will provide a lively and informative session on the transformation of the Brentwood Town Centre from an auto-oriented retail mall to a mixed-use, high-density space. So without further ado, Ian and Darren, please take it away.
Gentlemen, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, thank you very much, Sarah. Sorry, I couldn't get my cursor to move over to my unmute button. So thank you very much, Tara, for that introduction. I'm going to begin this presentation with a bit of an overview of the recent planning within the city of Burnaby, and then Darren is going to explain to you how he has taken advantage of that opportunity, and then I will wrap up and with a few of the sort of opportunities that we've sort of learned from this whole experience. And go. So for you who are unaware, the city of Burnaby is located in the lower mainland of the Greater Vancouver area, Metro Vancouver. And the city of Burnaby is planned around 4 town centers, the Brentwood, Metro Town, Edmonds, and Lougheed town centers. They comprise about 13% of the city's area, and they have about 1/3 of the population and increasing. This is where the most population has been increasing over the last few censuses. These areas are ideal for walking, cycling, and transit, and they're heavily served, especially by the SkyTrain system. We're going to be focusing in on the Brentwood Town Centre, and the Brentwood Town Centre, the plan that we use is the 1996 Town Centre Development Plan. And it was created at a time when it was unknown what kind of rapid transit would occur within the municipality. And so it was planned around future rapid transit of some kind. And you can see from these plans that it was concentrated primarily around the intersection of Willingdon and Lougheed. And at that intersection was one of the regional malls in Burnaby. Burnaby's town centers were built primarily around its regional malls. And so this particular mall was constructed in 1961. And at the time, it was the largest mall in Western Canada. And it was a big draw because it was right adjacent to the brand new Trans-Canada Highway, and also the extension of the Lougheed Highway. As you can see, at the time that this photograph was taken, it was about the same time that the plan was adopted, and there were only very few high-rise buildings, and it was mostly a sea of cars, lots of parking lot, and lots of highway-oriented development. So that. So the plan had a few adjustments to it over the years. In 2010, the city introduced supplemental density to incentivize transit-oriented development and to also fund community amenities within the town centre. We also introduced a master planning process in 2011 to look at larger sites, concentrate density, and allow us to phase density. And then more recently, in 2020, we introduced inclusionary rental, which was to protect, replace, and grow residential, and also to incentivize employment space by allowing people to use some of their commercial density, which was not being used, to build market rental in exchange for building employment projects. And so the next slide demonstrates to you the impact of those changes. And so what I got on the slide is you can see that rezoning 0037, which was done 20 years ago, just at the time that the Brentwood plan was first adopted, that it permitted the construction of this RM5 2.6 FAR building. And then you can see adjacent to it some more recent buildings, which are actually on the shape site, And these were as a result of the supplemental density and also of the master planning process, which allowed for the concentration of density. And so you can see here that although the commercial densities of both sites are very similar at 1.72 and 1.76, the residential density has allowed for a much more substantial building. In addition to allowing for more density, there were some caveats. We were looking for architectural excellence. We were also looking for an extraordinary public realm, because we wanted to encourage people to walk, cycle, and use transit. So we wanted really beautiful streets. And so that led to the introduction of the town center standards, which are being applied in all four of the town centers. It also included public art, and it included different elements to encourage alternative modes of transportation. So at the time, it included EV charging, which in 2010 wasn't very common. It also introduced car share and the greater use of transit and bicycles. And meanwhile, while the city had been doing all this work, I'm turning it over to Darren.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. And thank you for inviting myself and Shape to participate today in presenting the Brentwood story. Yeah, it's a story that has worked out well, and we love telling it. So with no further ado, I'll launch into it. Ian, my screen control buttons are fading in and out, so you may need to keep advancing the slides for me. In 2008, the world was in the middle of the financial crisis or Great Recession, and I got a phone call from a broker in Toronto that he had just listed for sale Brentwood Town Centre, as it was called. Ian, next slide. In 2007, there would have been a lineup of buyers for Brentwood. Shape was a new company, about 2 years old. We probably wouldn't even have gotten a phone call. In 2008, the financial markets were locked up. Most of the institutional buyers were on the sidelines. And I got a phone call basically begging for a meeting. Listed is for sale. I'm coming out to Vancouver. Would you be willing to meet with me? I know there's no money out there. The financial markets are locked down, but this is listed for sale. So I had done some work in the past in Burnaby and knew that they had a plan for 4 town centers where they were, for lack of a better word, militant about maintaining a vision of pushing all major density commercial office into those town centers. And I'd often complained about it. In hindsight, it's probably the best thing that ever happened. The city had a vision, as Ian explained, for a mixed use city center. At the time, no one wanted to talk about big visions. It was in the middle of a financial crisis, as I said. And while today it seems obvious, in 2008, it wasn't obvious. From a mall perspective, most shopping malls in Canada are owned by the major pension funds. Fortunately, we had a relationship with Hospitals of Ontario Pension Plan, HOOP, who at the time had owned Willington Business Park. So they were familiar with Burnaby, they were comfortable with Burnaby, and they were willing to be our partner. It turns out that we were the only bidder on the property. And there's a number of reasons why, the first being because of the financial crisis, but the second being the property itself. Brentwood Mall is an enclosed mall. It's located about 3 kilometers from Metro Town, which was the dominant player in the province. It was anchored by, at the time, by Sears and Zellers, which were struggling department stores. So there was a lot of risk and uncertainty about the retail future. And then from a redevelopment perspective, malls come with a lot of complications, and that kept some of the more logical private developers that you know their names of. They didn't want to get involved because of the complexities of that, is my understanding. Some of those complexities, in most situations, the anchor tenants have strict development controls all over the property. So as the owner, there's very little redevelopment that you can do without getting their permission. Fortunately, over the years, we were able to work with Sears at the time, Zellers, which became Target, and now London Drugs. But at the time, there was no guarantee that we were going to be able to do that, which I think adds another level of risk. As far as building a high-density mixed-use city center, there's a question mark of, yeah, that sounds all great, but is it executable? Is another question. In hindsight, there's a number of them in Metro Vancouver going on, several of which we're involved with. But I would suggest that the situation and the ingredients for that to be feasible are actually quite rare. It's not every shopping center that is suitable for redevelopment, and you can actually execute. Next slide, Ian. Yeah, the ingredients for success. We did go forward with the purchase of Brentwood Mall. Obviously, at the time, it was a decision made on fundamentals. Metro Vancouver population growth has been steady, really steady for the last 30 years. Recessions here in Asia, all kinds of ups and downs in the market. Population growth has been consistent, and it's a very land constrained market. Natural land constraints, the mountains, the ocean, the rivers, and a particular note is the agricultural land reserve, which acts as an urban growth containment boundary. That's fundamental to the success of what we've been able to do. What you're looking at is a plan from the Metro Vancouver plan that shows the regional town centers. There's 23 of them, of which Brentwood is one of them. And the municipalities, both levels of government, provincial and municipal, have been very consistent about pushing growth to those town centers. Moving forward, 68% of all new growth over the next 25 years in Metro Vancouver is targeted for those town centers. Those are some of the fundamentals that gave us the confidence to buy the site. SkyTrain is a big part, as you know, and in Metro Vancouver, TransLink and the other government agencies over the years have put transit in the right place. What I mean is it connects the town centers. Not only does it connect the town centers, but it connects developable land. Brentwood, Lougheed, Metrotown, Richmond Center, Coquitlam Center, Surrey Center. There's underutilized land, a lot of it with shopping centers, et cetera, that can be developed and densified on transit, which adds ridership and makes it all work. As I travel the country, if I travel down to Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and ride their transit systems, it is not the case. You can stare out the window. When you come above ground, you can get out at the stations. In many cases, it's followed rail lines that don't touch where density wants to go. So a big part of why Brentwood has been a success has been because of the long-range planning policies that have been consistently upheld and where they put transit. Next slide, Ian. What also helped us was a changing world. Social economic trends, I'd like to say we were super smart, super intelligent, and foresaw everything that happened. That's not the case. We were buying it on basic fundamentals, knew that the city supported densification. It was a long-term investment. But as we got into it, the world changed with us. Suburban has shifted to urbanization of the suburbs. Single purpose has shifted towards mixed use, automobiles to multimodal, bike, walk, transit, convenience focused has shifted to convenience and experience. And when I say shifted, the market shifted. In this case, the land use planners were ahead of the market, far ahead of it. The market caught up. In particular, Metro Vancouver, where residents want to live on transit in mixed use communities. Retailers want to be there where the people are, and workers want to be in settings that they have transit and they have a full range of amenities. 10, 20 years ago, it wasn't the case. Retail, as Ian alluded to, was all about convenience of the automobile, parking in front of the door, in and out. You've seen it everywhere. The strip centers, the big box retail. It was all about convenience, and that too has shifted with online shopping. That's very convenient. So what shopping has done has become more experiential, more social, more restaurants, more entertainment, and that all worked for us at Brentwood in the vision. Yeah, next slide. Soon after being introduced to the property, I sat down with Burnaby planning staff, and they confirmed that, yes, this is designated as a town center. And we want to see it, we support densification, but we don't want to see towers in parking fields. I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, our vision is for a holistic city center that's integrated with the community. It's integrated and has a holistic vision that's comprehensive in nature. At the time, being a developer, I was a bit skeptical. That sounds like potentially a waste of time. We can't predict the future. It's going to cost us a lot of money. Can we just get going? I would say that I was completely wrong. They were completely right. The master plan and the comprehensive nature of it, I believe, is completely fundamental to the success of what's happened, and the story we tell, and the story that's been well received from residents, retailers, and office workers. So what happened was we did agree with the municipality on a two-step process from an approval perspective. The first step being a master plan rezoning, which established the density, the permitted uses, general massing, and the public realm layout, but didn't get any deeper than that. Elevations, statistics, all the details, those are part of a second step in the process, being a site-specific rezoning. Accolades to the city for that process. These things are complicated. A lot of money goes into planning, and the ability to get in front of the community, get in front of council for a decision on a more macro or more general basis is super important. And it also leaves some flexibility as the world evolves. that the plan can adapt. So there's flexibility on phasing, there's flexibility on what uses go in the massing. So from our perspective, it's turned out really well. The city was very, I think, ahead of their time in that process. They were also willing to set down a schedule of bi-weekly meetings to work through the master plan process. So as a developer, inherently the cities are your partner. You can't do anything without city approvals, so you need a good relationship, and we've been very happy with the pragmatic and transparent approach. The master plan, as you can see on the screen, allows for about 4 million square feet of residential and about 2.6 million square feet of commercial. From a general massing perspective, for those that are not familiar, at the top right of your screen is the SkyTrain station, and it's the corner of Willington and Lougheed, the kind of highest profile kind of main and main for the Brentwood Town Centre area. And on the bottom left of your screen is a single family neighborhood. So there was a strategy of scaling up density as you move to the prime busy corner and transit. Next slide, Ian. This is a two-dimensional view of the same thing. A few points on what we think are important. The city's vision of this integration with the existing urban fabric. I have become a complete believer. It's part of the magic. The existing street network extends into the site, and there's a network on site that kind of ties in. Transit is seamless, and there's a hierarchy of urban spaces, which I think is really important. Every part of the site does not want to be the busiest, the highest activity, but you need to think about where that wants to be. And we leverage the SkyTrain station on the bottom left as kind of the energy zone that to create that vibe. And as we move away from the site towards the neighborhood, it stages down in character and of scale and massing, and it scales down in the nature of the public spaces in the public realm themselves. The site has a grade from top right to bottom left, and that allows for it creates some challenges, but also creates some interesting opportunities. And I say that I think the master plan does a good job of being intuitive, but at the same time, it's something that you walk through and you're experiencing different places and different feelings and different character, which add to the interest. Next slide. This is a rendering. I'm going to show you the picture of the finished product, but this was the rendering taken from the corner of Willington and Lougheed. This is our first impression. We thought it's important to create a first impression, and there's a few things that are going on here. First of all, we moved away from kind of standard urban design parameters, which would call for a 4 to 6 story continuous street wall. Because the site was 28 acres, we wanted to open it up so people moved through the corner and into the middle of the property and to the back of the property. And it was also an opportunity to deal with the grade at the front of the property. So you can see the grand staircase. You can see how we've set the towers back from the corner. That pushed them up in height, but it made for a much more expansive, much more inviting, and much more permeable entrance point from that key intersection of Lougheed and Willington. You can see the side, so the SkyTrain station on the right-hand side of your screen. When that was built before the project, and the architect at the time, I believe it was Peter Busby, had the foresight to set the deck of the SkyTrain station at the same elevation as the shopping center. So when you come off the SkyTrain, it's flat. It comes flat across to the existing shopping center and the redevelopment thereof, which has worked really, really well. And you can see that on your right. Next slide. This is a bird's eye view looking into to the public plaza in the Brentwood Town Centre plan from 1996 that Ian showed you earlier. There was a square on the site identifying the need for a public plaza. A whole lot of time was spent on figuring out exactly where it wants to be and what it wants to be. Where it wants to be, we felt that it was an opportunity to create a lively urban plaza which harnessed the energy of the SkyTrain station, the bus stops on the street, and the pedestrian traffic on Willington and Lougheed. But we wanted to set it back slightly from the corner so that the ambiance wasn't so noisy and busy. So it's visible from the corner, but it's tucked away and surrounded by buildings to cut away from the wind and make it a pleasant environment. And we also wanted, if you're riding the SkyTrain station, we didn't want anyone to miss it. As you're riding the station, this is the holy drop your swear word in there moment that you can't miss it. You're looking right into the heart. I think that's something that we did really well. Other projects around Vancouver and North America haven't. When you arrive at the station, you do not know what you're getting into. You do not know what you're walking into. You're behind buildings, you're underground. When you arrive at the SkyTrain at the amazing Brentwood, you can see everything going on, and you can't miss it, and you want to be part of it. So location, activation, very, very important. A plaza, you need to decide what the plaza is for. Is it a quiet plaza? Is it meant to be a social place? If it's meant to be a social place, it needs to be surrounded by uses that naturally flow into the plaza. We've strategically focused the majority of our restaurants, our patios on the plaza. As you can see in the rendering, multiple layers for overlook. And sizing is important. Bigger is not necessarily better. There's a certain size that feels spacious and intimate and engaging versus wide open and windswept and uncomfortable. It's not the same size for every development. Here, it's about an acre, including the kind of the stairs and the lower plaza. Fortunately, when we built it and we go there today, it feels right. It's hard to know in advance, but it feels pretty good, and we're pretty excited. Next slide, Ian. Purposeful streets. Streets form a big part of master plans, and I think that there's lots of discussion, and sometimes there's not enough discussion. There was lots of discussion here as far as which streets would have cars, which would be pedestrian only, which streets would have bike paths, which ones wouldn't. It's all very important. It's probably too much detail for this presentation, but we have a mixture of both. We don't have bikes lanes on every road. We have cars on some roads, cars not. And I think it's part of the magic. I would say Brentwood Boulevard, what you're looking at, we wanted cars on it. We wanted it to feel vibrant. And we wanted it to, it's 28 acres. People like to be able to drive around and feel it and understand the place. Over time, once they know it, they duck into parkades, but the initial comfort level, being able to drive through and see what you're going to experience, I think is very important. And over time, the roads are designed that they can be shut down in certain places as things densify, and this gets to be a really busy pedestrian place. Coming from the SkyTrain, those we call Muse, they are pedestrian only, but Brentwood Boulevard, we put cars on. You can see the street trees. Here we decided on parking. It's parallel parking. It was all part of figuring out how wide the road wants to be. Not too narrow, not too wide. We want cars going slow. We want it to be a safe place. So it is quite tight on purpose, but creates an important link from kind of northwest to southeast corner of the site. Next slide, Ian. Yeah, streets. I threw this in here. This is a recent internal analysis we did. Streets are very important to master plans. As we work on these master plans, often the default approach is to take the ruler and just connect roads that are on the perimeter of malls, ignore that the mall's there, run it right through. That might be the right approach. But when you create a master plan around an operating shopping center, you need to think about how it's going to evolve over time. The roads need to often function without bisecting the whole site. And while they ultimately may, they don't need to. At Brentwood, because of the slope, the roads don't all cross the entire site. It's a combination of pedestrian environments, street environments, muse environments, as I've described. And what you see on the screen, which is too small so just trust me, is Venice, Paris, London, and others. And you see that over time as these cities have developed, they're very interesting and function well in all kinds of different and which is often interesting and surprising versus just your standard grid. So we think there's a sweet spot in the middle. It's different for every site, but the formulaic grid can be broken. I was just in New York a couple of weeks ago, walking down Park Avenue. It's a big, wide main thoroughfare, and bang, it stops at a building. New York's great, it still moves on. I'm walking, as I cross from 5th Avenue to 6th Avenue, Broadway cuts through on an angle. Why? Not sure, but it's all kind of interesting. So I think in city building and master plan building, it's okay to add variety, to do things that are a little bit unexpected, and kind of break the rules of land use planners. Sorry, Ian. Next slide. The finished product, those were all renderings. What does it look like? Hopefully some of you have been there. If not, we would love to host you. This is phase 1, which was completed a couple years ago. The retail is still opening. It's not all open. In 2003, it's virtually impossible to line up all the retailers, all the restaurants to open up at one time. Plus we were dealing with COVID. So we are, from a retail perspective, I think we're 94% leased. And I would say we're at about 80% open. There was 3 towers. Tower 1 and 2 are on the left-hand side of the screen. They're twin towers that were rotated. So it looks different from every perspective, but the floor plate is the same. The tower 1 on your left is half rental. The bottom half is rental. The top half was condo. At the time, it was done for financial reasons, meaning nobody had brought 2 60-story towers to the market, which became 3 in Burnaby, 1,200 homes. Because of all the retail, we didn't want to be stuck in the pre-selling phase too long. So we had a strategy that the bottom half of the 2 towers could be rental. And fortunately, our financial co-owner was interested in the rental product. And at the end of the day, we kept 300 homes for rental, and there's 3 towers. The plaza was all part of phase 1. We felt that phase 1 needed to be transformative. So we took the front 8 acres of the site as phase 1, right at the SkyTrain station, to make a big statement and to launch the project. Next slide, Ian. This is looking down at the plaza. There's quite a bit of detailing in the plaza with different types of landscaping, different types of benches. There's a fountain, a Bellagio style that has dancing water to music and lights. On the top right, you can see the connection to the SkyTrain. It's seamless. It's about 40 feet. It's right there. And you can see the rooftops that on the left that can be public places that look down on the plaza. Next slide, Ian. This is a shot from the summer. It's become a super active, super popular place. With its design, we also designed and pre-built a stage. So the stage is designed for the plaza. And it can be taken down and put up, but it's our stage. It fits the spot. When you look at the picture, you can see the lighting, the speakers. That's all permanent. That's all there. So it's all wired for sound and lighting. And it's been super popular with not just the residents at Brentwood, but in the neighborhood, and getting stronger every day. There is a relationship here with the city of Burnaby, and they have a statutory right of way over the plaza, and there's a sharing agreement that they can use it for city events on certain days of the year. So it is a true public plaza. As the owner, we maintain it. We can host events, but the city can also host their events here. It's illuminated. This is a promotion we did last summer with, we brought in a bunch of teeter-totters that were all lit up at night and was kind of super cool. This is the connection to SkyTrain from down low. You can see how convenient it is, how short it is from the plaza, from the heart of the project to the SkyTrain platform. This is it at night. On the left-hand side is what we call the grand lobby. Part of the strategy was to do the arrival experience well, not just from SkyTrain and bikes and pedestrians, but also cars. So there's 4 layers of commercial parking and 2 levels of residential parking below phase 1. It all comes up in a central vertical circulation core. On every level of parkade, it is dead center of the parking field. It is a lit up glass cube. There's no confusion when you get out of your car as to where the entrance is. And it all comes up into that glowing cube, which is like a hotel lobby, and connects all the levels of the retail and ties over to the existing mall and future redevelopment of the mall. This is just a picture of the street. This is what we call the East Mews. This is pedestrians only. There's a significant amount of landscaping, benches, purposeful. Again, we feel that in placemaking, there's a certain amount of intimacy that feels good. So filling up the space is a good thing to an extent. So you want clear pathways, but again, they don't want to be too wide. People want to feel like that it's intimate, that it's friendly. This is Brentwood Boulevard, and we think it looks even better than the rendering. Above you is a walkway from the grand lobby that ties over the street. So when it is raining and pouring, like it does occasionally in Vancouver, there are weather protected ways to move around the site. So primarily an outdoor experience, but you can also move around indoors as well. And we think it's kind of the best of both worlds. This is a picture of what we call tables, which is it's a food court, but I hesitate to say the word food court, as this is far and away different than your typical mall food court. We've tenanted it with all independent local food offerings. The furniture is designed to be comfortable and feel good to hang out, to lounge, to work there. It's not designed to get you in and out as fast as you can. It's meant to be a meeting place, an eating place, and food has become a big part of retail. It's become a big part of mixed use with all the residents on site. It's super convenient, just an elevator away. This is just a shot of the grand staircase, and it's become also another public hangout. In the stairs, you can actually see there's digital screens, which was part of the artwork strategy. Working with Burnaby, our approach was a combination of building features, unique building features, and commissioned art pieces. So you can see extra money and extra detailing spent on stuff like the stairs, where they can be lit up at night, was part of the art strategy, which we are thankful for, and was just allowed us to spend more money on buildings and on unique features, as well as commissioned art pieces. And that's a picture of the grand lobby. Small Victory is a local. We've had good success at bringing in kind of the local best in Vancouver, best in Metro Vancouver. They were in Yaletown and South Granville. We were able to pull them out. And as part of the grand lobby experience, they flow out into the common areas and are open for breakfast, for coffee, and late at night for a drink when you're leaving the theater. Haven't spent much time on the homes. We want to open it up for questions soon, but safe to say that we've tried to be as thoughtful in the homes as in the public realm. We are moving on to phase 2. Phase 2 is under construction. We call it Tower 5 and Tower 6. We skipped Tower 4 because of construction phasing. We shifted slightly. So Tower 5 is 53 stories, Tower 6 is 39, and Tower 6 is the first tower that includes designated affordable homes as per Burnaby's new policies. That's Tower 6, so rendering, that's under construction. And you can see the excavation for Tower 5 and 6. We've also got an application in for Tower 8. Sorry, again, we skipped Tower 7 as we move around. Tower 8 is all rental. As part of Burnaby's strategy to encourage rental, they do permit from the commercial density pool rental residential on a 1-for-1 basis. For every square foot of commercial space, we can build 1 square foot of rental, which has been a good program for us and for the city. Master plan amendment, all that great work. We are in the process right now of tweaking it. That's a response to new policies brought in by the city for affordable housing and the rental I just mentioned. There's now a requirement for 20% affordable housing. The city, again, was quite pragmatic in not taking density away from us, but giving us the ability to for new density to use for that affordable housing, which is kind of fundamental to making it economic sense. So we are some tweaking to the massing needs to be done to allow for the affordable housing, and it allows us to kind of tweak and improve kind of the back third of the site. So that's a process we're going through right now with the city. And concluding my comments, mixed use development, there's lots of talk about mixed use. I would suggest that the opportunity to build around regional shopping centers is extraordinary. If you have a tower that has retail on the ground floor, 7-Eleven and a coffee shop, it doesn't necessarily change your life. When you've got 1 million square feet of retail and amenities and shops and services and SkyTrain, all walkable in 5 minutes, it's a game changer. And there's lots of talk about complete communities. Historically, that has meant the city's complete, i.e. Burnaby's a complete community, Richmond's a complete community. Well, this is a complete community within a 5-minute walk. Not everything you've shown on our site. It's also less than a 5-minute walk from the elementary school, from the future community center, from the high school. You can live life at your an elevator ride away, as our marketing people like to say, but also the connection to the transit. You can move around the region very easily as well. I think that's it for me, Ian.
Thanks, Darren. That was a really terrific trip through your project. And so we're just going to run through the impact and lessons learned very quickly here. So probably 4 big things is it's all about the plan. Having a plan has been instrumental to the successful development. It's assured the community that they were able to participate in the creation of the plan at the time, and that what they're seeing when the plan is realized is what they expected to see. As Darren mentioned, we like to play within the lines, and so the town center is not expanded. We've managed to keep it quite constrained. We've stuck to the principles of the original plan to make sure that it is a truly not only mixed use, but a complete community. And although policy has been adjusted to achieve the plan, we managed to maintain the principles and play within the lines. The Brentwood Town Centre, so I just took this photograph a few weeks ago. It's now at about a third build up for the entire town center. The amazing Brentwood is in the center of this photograph. And at the edges of the plan, we're continuing to hold those edges and ensure that all of the growth is maintained within the town centers. We maintain the principles, and this is the Ani site where so BC's tallest tower is under construction. And so in that case, it will be a huge job generator with almost 1 million square feet of employment space. And then there have been policy adjustments within the plan. As Darren mentioned, with the introduction of the affordable housing, there have been some changes that have had to occur to the master plans, but they've been absorbed within the plans. This is the Concord site in Brentwood. And now we're off to questions. I'm sorry, Tara, we've left it very short amount of time. You're muted.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Thank you both, gentlemen. That was a fantastic session. We have right now several questions, and we'll start with one from Alan. And he said there are significant public access areas in the middle of the site. I noticed a bunch of fountains in particular. How are op costs covered?
Sure. Shall I answer that one? So as part of this, as Darren mentioned, part of the plan was that Civic Square would be located in that area, and working through the master plan process, we recognized that the best place for it was actually up above the grade of the street. And so the city has a 1 acre statutory right of way over the plaza area, with the idea that the city will be able to program activities within that space on a cost recovery basis. So so a shape will set up the stage, et cetera, and the city will reimburse shape for the cost of setup, takedown, and any additional maintenance that's required in order to have events on the site.
Very great. Thank you, Ian. Our next question is from Brad. He said, "It looks amazing, finished project. I was curious if you have noticed a big gap between a sellable price per square foot, depending on the type of transit that contributes to a transit-oriented development. Some data in the US suggests that rail adds to the sellable price per square foot versus bus transit might detract depending on the design and the distance to homes."
Yeah, our experience, our direct experience is in Metro Vancouver and a little bit in Toronto. What I would say is it's a site specific. It depends on the city. First, how relevant is transit, and then how relevant are the forms. So in Metro Vancouver, as I described, SkyTrain has done a really good job of connecting the major hubs that people want to be in. So there is a high demand for SkyTrain, because it has become the kind of preferred of home buyers, office buyers, etc. SkyTrain, because it is so it comes every 5 minutes. It's covered. It's a pre-purchase ticket. It is simple and it is seen as value. So over the last 20 years, that has become and there is a definite price premium for that. And I would also point out, which is super interesting, is when you have fixed transit like SkyTrain or subway with limited stations, it's like having lakefront property. You can't make any more. So with a car or a bus or a bicycle, it doesn't really matter. If you're in Brentwood, it doesn't matter what block you're on, because you can pull the cord and the bus will stop on your block or the next block or the next block. When you have fixed stations where that are spread out several miles, several kilometers apart, being close to that station is really important. So if you're a food operator, you don't want people walking by your competitor to have to walk 2 blocks. So from a retail perspective, from the convenience of the home, that land around that station and owning a unit at the station is a big locational advantage. And we're seeing it in pricing. I think there's still education to go to. We're doing our best to educate the public on the benefits of it. But that definitely, there is a tiering.
Great, thank you. The next question is from Dexter, and he says, for Tower 1, oh, it just moved. For Tower 1, it is interesting to see the mix of rental and strata. Are there any management issues as strata and rental share the common area?
It's worked really well. So there are some question marks. There were some question marks, but we would do it again, potentially. It is a way to de-risk tall projects, in that if half rental, half market, you're selling half, and it allows the investors to keep have the best of both worlds, some immediate cash flow and some long-term hold for rental. We have shared, as pointed out by, I think it was Dexter, the common areas. We haven't had any complaints. The common areas are generous. So we do have split lobbies. for the market versus the rental. They do have their own lobbies, but we've had no problems. And for the general person on the street, it's you feel like you have your private entrance as an owner, but the lobbies are the same quality. It doesn't feel any different. So we finished the rental suites with the same quality of improvements as the market housing, because we knew we were going to be competing, right? So of the market housing, even though we sell it, half of those units are probably back on the rental market from just private landlords renting out their unit. So we, as the owner of 300 rental units, we needed to be able to compete with the product that the homeowners were renting.
Okay, good. Next, we have a question from Aaron. And he says the development process in BC in general are often criticized as slow and cumbersome. It took nearly 10 years for the amazing Brentwood to complete from its acquisition in 2010. Is this typical? Approximately how many changes or revisions were made about the development site plan? What was one of the most challenging items for the city and for the developer?
Ian, you can go first. I'll go second.
Sure. So I think I think one of the most remarkable things about this particular site is how closely it actually resembles the design that Darren showed you. So he showed you the renderings, and those were part of the original plan. And then he showed you the built structure. So very little changed, in fact, over time. I think that probably the two most time-consuming aspects were having the conversation at the beginning and through the master planning process to make sure that everybody was fully on the same page. This was the very first master plan community that we did, and fortunately for us, SHAPE and their consultants were incredibly open to discussing and trying to realize a complete town center. The other piece, so that took an enormous amount of time, and we still really found a solution to it yet, is all the legal agreements that are required. There are so many different agreements that were necessary to deal with the complexity of the airspace parcels, the rights of way, the access, and all the different competing interests trying to achieve the various things. And so again, it's been a lot of conversation between SHAPE and the city and the lawyers on both sides. I think that's probably the two most time consuming for us. Darren?
Yeah, it's too long. I think it's too long for good intentions, not nefarious, good intentions, but over time, the layers and layers of detail demanded leads to a long process. And I kind of alluded to it, like, what's the solution? Well, these things are complicated. So as Ian said, a certain amount of time is required. I would say that the right amount of detail at the right time would help most municipalities. So zoning is land use. If you went to planning school, zoning is land use. It's permitted uses, it's the density, it's the setback. It's not building design. Development permits are form and character and measurements and stats. That's a development permit, and a building permit is obviously a building permit. The level of complication that certain municipalities will make you go through before you get to council, before you get a vote, before you know even support for your project is unfair. As a small developer, you could never do it. So my suggestion would be land use is land use, and a development permit is a development permit. Don't mess the two together. And I think that there's been some steps made recently with the provincial government talking about reducing public consultation requirements as it relates to official community plans, if it's permitted in the official community plan. I don't think it's necessarily a good thing to not consult the public, but as part of an official community plan, if that's gone through a public process, those uses are already been vetted, it's suitable for the site. I think you can skip and shorten and short circuit a lot of duplicate. If there's an up-to-date official community plan that says this is mixed use high density, that's transparent. So I think there's a lot of, you can shorten the process by not repeating and not demanding more detail until it's needed, so you can keep the project moving forward and not get stuck.
Okay, well, thank you. We have quite a few more questions, but our time is running short, so I think we'll do 2 more questions and then we'll sign off and let everybody get on with their day. Is that agreeable to you, gentlemen?
Sure.
Okay, the next question is, what is the parking ratio per residential home? Is there pressure to decrease this from the city in future phases?
Sure. So it's a really good question. I mentioned to you that that in 2010 we introduced supplementary density. It permitted a reduction in the parking requirement to 1.1 for residential uses strata, and subsequently we've introduced other ways of reducing parking to, for instance, for rental, we allow it to go down to 0.6. And then we also will look at reducing it further with a parking study that supports further reductions. Parking is definitely a huge affordability issue. In this case, this development has parking, it goes down to 9 and 10 stories below ground. It's an enormous hole that was dug when Shape was busy constructing this, and each of those parking stalls costs a fortune, and adds to the cost of living at a development site like this. So trying to find the optimum amount of parking, what parking is actually truly needed, and not building more than that, has been a big part of our process. Darren, I don't know if you've probably got some thoughts on that too.
Yeah, a few comments. One is, I think decoupling parking stalls from units is important. As Ian said, it's $80,000+ for a parking stall. So if you're living sustainably and don't own a car, why should you have to buy a parking stall? But if the city makes us build a parking stall for every unit, then we have to sell it. So if you're not using a parking stall, you're still paying for it because you're subsidizing. So I think that's looking to decouple parking stalls. What's the right number? It's being pushed down. Here we did 0.5 for rental, 1.1, as Ian said, for market. And we'll continue to probably push that down. Here with the multiple phases, we can see what the take up is and what the usage is. So we'd like to think as we get into further phases and that we can keep reducing that parking requirement, and we'll be able to use some parking from other phases because it's already there and not being used. But it is a bit of a work in process, as majority of home buyers want a parking stall still in Burnaby, and that might change over time. And even some that don't have cars still think that if I buy a unit, I need a parking stall in case I resell it. I need to be able to offer it. But that mentality is quickly changing, and we're going to see demand get pushed down.
Okay, thank you. And the next and the last question is great overview of what can be done and what will be done. So Darren, if you could do this process over again, is there anything you would do differently?
I wouldn't say completely differently. I like to think we're getting smarter. I would say that making things simple is super important when projects are complicated. So when you got multiple uses, office, residential, retail, parking, rental, home, everything as I described in the master plan to the public wants to feel seamless, integrated, holistic. From an execution perspective, you really want things to be as simple, whether it's the legal agreements with the city, whether it's the bite-sized pieces, and how you pull it together, the more you can simplify it. And this one was complicated, and it's also physically complicated. Just the nature of the site, everything's running at angles. And some of it is needed for architectural interest, but you kind of want to minimize all levels of complexity, how these things come together physically, and all the kind of legal agreements that bind them. I think you want to be asking yourself, feel interesting, feel comprehensive, but simple, bite-size. And bigger isn't necessarily better. Like this was transformative, but as the projects get bigger, they get more complicated. Like there's 5 banks as the lender on phase 1, because it's just too big for the Canadian banks. So you got 5 sets of banks, you got 5 sets of lawyers, and construction, there's only certain trades that can handle the size, the scale. So there's a tipping point between economies of scale and going down where it's costing you more, and more in time and more money. So there's probably a sweet spot on the size of the phases and keeping them simple.
Okay, great. Thank you both. So we have quite a few questions left over, and what we've done is we've recorded those questions and we will get them answered. And when we send the link out for the recording, we'll also send out the responses to those questions. It's just going on 1:13 now, and we're a bit over. I apologize for running late. So I want to thank you once again, Ian, and you, Darren, for sharing your work with us. It's been a fascinating session on land use in BC. The next session of the 2023 BC Land Summit Presents will be held in later this spring. It will be hosted by the Appraisal Institute of Canada in British Columbia. And thanks to everybody for taking the rest of your day off to join us away from your lunch. And we can hope you can join us for the next one. And we hope that you enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.